In this lesson, we're going to be looking at kites and trapezoids. Our objectives are to determine kite knowledge and to determine trapezoid knowledge. Our vocabulary is vertex angles, non-vertex angles, bases, base angles, isosceles trapezoid, and consecutive angles. This lesson is going to be done a little differently. What I have done is I have actually set up the proof or investigation because I think that it's a pretty simple one that you guys can kind of just look at and figure out. So your job will be to answer the questions that I pose to you, and I'll check those when you come to class. So here I have two kites. In the first one, I've drawn the kite. These two consecutive sides are congruent. These two consecutive sides are congruent. I've drawn this angle, or this diagonal, between these two angles. These two angles are called the vertex angles. Okay? So what we want to do is try and figure out two things. We want to figure out something about the vertex angles, something about the non-vertex angles. So my question is, what does it look like this diagonal does to the two vertex angles? Once you've answered that question, let's go on to the second one. These right here are called the non-vertex angles. So I'm going to kind of guide you so that hopefully you can figure something out about the non-vertex angles. The non-vertex angles, if you notice, when I draw this diagonal, I cut the shape into two triangles. If you can figure something out about the two triangles that we have here, you should be able to make a leap or a progression or a proof to what we can say about the non-vertex angles. Alright, our last thing that we want to look at for a kite is this. What I have done is I have drawn both diagonals. So we have our diagonal here, our diagonal here. There are two things that are happening with these diagonals. One is about how they, or both are about how they intersect. Do you notice anything about the angle created from the two diagonals? So how they cross. And can you tell anything about the diagonal that is between the non-vertex angles? So these are non-vertex angles. What happens to this diagonal when this diagonal is drawn through it? Alright, let's go on to trapezoids. Alright, the first thing with a trapezoid is we have to have two parallel lines and two non-parallel lines, or segments. We want to look at what are called consecutive angles. Consecutive angles are two angles that are on different bases. So this would be a base, and this would be a base. The bases are the parallel lines. So consecutive angles would be angle 1 here and angle 2 there. Those would be consecutive, 1 and 2. Can anybody think of a connection between those two angles? Two other consecutive angles would be 3 here and 4 here. Can you see a connection between 3 and 4? So they should have the same connection. 1 and 2 should have the same connection as 3 and 4. So look at a way that consecutive angles of a trapezoid work together. Alright, these are our last two. They look at isosceles trapezoids. So what we have here is we have our parallel lines, or segments, and then our non-parallels, and the non-parallels are congruent. So what we want to do is we want to look at the base angles. Well, this is a base here, and this is a base here. So the first base angles would be this angle here. We'll call this one 1. We'll call this one 2. So we want to know, how do angles 1 and 2 work together? The other base angles on this would be 3 and 4 there. How do 3 and 4 work together? So we want to know, how do the base angles work together in an isosceles trapezoid? Our last one is, we've got our isosceles trapezoid again. If we draw the diagonals, is there any connection that you can kind of tell from the diagonals just by the eye test? Alright, please come with your answers to class on all of these questions. We'll check if your thought process was right, see how your geometry thinking is going. If there's any part of this you didn't get, please pause, rewind, and rewatch, and bring any questions to class. Thank you.